campus, our location.
Sorry about that.
It's all good, among other things, right? So it is a good school in a good location, but I'll talk about this later. All right, let's do it. And I do have quite a few of these, so just bear with me for those dad jokes. Looking at kind of the admissions, though, the applications, the deadlines, the types of admissions and applications, I've kind of got the four big ones here. And this is a broad, this is a generalization. Everything changes from school to school, right? That should probably be the most, the disclaimer at the outset that every school is different. Every institution has their own policies, their own deadlines, but this is a generic observation, right? So you have early decision, early action, regular decision, and then rolling admissions. And usually those deadlines for the first two, the early decision, early action, is around, mid-November, early December, just kind of in the ballpark, those dates. Regular decision usually goes until about, March, maybe March 1st, mid-February. And then rolling admissions are, as the name suggests, they're rolling. They're kind of continuous. It varies. Even some schools would still be accepting applications now, even though school for us starts next week, for example. So it really depends on the institution and kind of where you are. But this is a very, very basic overview of the dates, at least, and the application deadlines, and then the admission decisions, which you can also see the early decisions, early actions, you hear back quicker, right? You hear back sooner. But let's look at it a little bit more in detail. Early decision. This one, of course, is if you have that one dream school that you kind of feel that's where your fate lies, that's where your future is, this is the one for you, right? You have that one school, you know that you're a good fit for that school, and that school is a good fit for you, right? Kind of fit is kind of the key word for all things admissions. That's what you want to be thinking about. But there's also a lot more under the surface, right, for early decision. So, let me just also add that I look at this as somebody who does this for a living, right? So I read applications, I help make decisions. So I'm giving you kind of my insight on the other side of the aisle about what this looks like to me as somebody who is admitting students. And if I see an early decision application, that just shows, wow, this student really wants to come to Maryville College. Like, this student has put essentially all of his or her eggs in one basket to make it to Maryville College. And that does make it a little bit more generous, right? Like, that gives that student a little bit more of a boost because they're telling me through that application, okay, this is my dream school. This is where I want to be. So it's something to think about. But again, you can only use that card once, right? You don't want to be applying early decision to all schools, because early decision is a binding application, meaning if you apply early decision to any school and you get in, you are ethically or kind of morally and sometimes contractually committed to going to that school, right? So you want to make sure you're fully aware of all things about this school, what it is, what it offers, finances, scholarship opportunities, everything before you actually make that early decision application. And there are a lot of benefits to this. Going back to like what it tells to the admissions person, that's huge. But you also get priority status, right? So you might get first dibs on housing, or first dibs on class registration, or first dibs on majors, right? So there's a lot of benefits because you're the first one in. You get the first, you're in the first pool for making decisions. Also, and this is debatable, but there is some data, there are some statistics that you have a higher chance of admission because you're in a smaller pool of applicants, right? So not every student is doing early decision, and people like me are trying to fill up those slots quickly. So the earlier that you apply, the bigger chance you have of getting in. And I do have some data on that on another slide. We'll look at that. But really the big thing as well is, once you apply early decision, you're done, right? You don't need to be applying other schools necessarily. So you can kind of have a stressless or a less stressful senior year. You have senioritis already, you're tired, you're stressed from looking at schools. This is kind of a way to, commit to something and then let fate take its course. So this is early decision, just in a nutshell, and we can come back to this. But here's some kind of that data that I was talking about. And we'll look at the regular decision later, but this does have some statistics on the acceptance rate from early decision. And I took out the names of these schools. A lot of these schools are schools that you would recognize. These are very good, prestigious schools. But you can just kind of see that early decision acceptance rate. It does help a little bit, So sometimes again, twice as much admissions. Early decision. Sometimes it's you can see the ratio, right? 1 to 5, 8 to 6. So these are good numbers. But again, should you apply? That's up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. You just want to make sure this is the school that you are 100% in love with and that you want to be for the next 4 years, right? This is a investment for sure. So yeah, we'll come back to this. I don't want to linger too much just on early decision, but the big factor here, the big point is it is binding, right? You are committed to this school if you get in. So early action is similar, but without the binding, right? So you can apply to multiple schools, early action. There's a lot of pros to this. It still says that, you kind of, this could be your dream school, right? As opposed to early decision, like this is my dream school. It's more like this could be my dream school. And you can apply to multiple schools, early action. You still get in your application early, right? We saw that deadline is still usually mid-November, early December. You'll hear back earlier as well, right? So you kind of have the information that you need. It just gives you a big jump start on the process, on the whole application process. And I should say some of the cons, right, for both early action and early decision is you need to know and have everything ready, come October, come November of that year. And so at least here in America, that would mean, taking that first set of SAT or ACT tests, right? There's multiple tests throughout the year. You're kind of mandated, right? You're kind of dictated to take that first option just because the timeline. So, if you're not prepared for standardized tests, or if you're not prepared for your essays or your letters of recommendations, which we'll get to later, then you're kind of playing catch up and you're maybe getting behind and it's not the best application overall. So those are kind of the cons, right? If you don't do early action, early decision, you have much longer to prepare. But if you are one of those very precise, kind of on it students, and you, again, have everything ready and lined up, the pro is you can be done with that and then sit back and wait for the results. I have restrictive early action. This is a very specific kind of case study. I think there's only like a dozen schools in America that does this, but it's essentially in between early decision and early action. And really is what it does is it's a lot of Ivy League schools, right? Obviously very good schools, but it kind of restricts you or limits you from going to other really, really prestigious schools. So it's kind of that midway point of early decision where it's not binding, but it is still, it limits where you can apply elsewhere. So again, I don't want to go too much into it. Maryville College, we don't do this. Most schools don't do this, but it is an option and you might see that pop up. But yeah, so early action, non-binding, early decision, binding. Those are the two big differences. Regular decision, this is the most common application or admission. You usually receive, again, your deadline or your decision in the early spring. And then May Day. May 1st is a big day. It's kind of like a holiday for people in my industry, but that's really deposit deadline day. So just like early action, regular decision, you have until May 1st, essentially, to decide where you're going to go. You can have multiple offers from lots of schools, but May 1st for regular decision, you have until that date to actually say or think about where you want to go. Regular decision, it's the latest application deadline, unless you do rolling, which we'll get to that. and there's no restrictions, right? You can apply, some students apply to like 30 schools, right? All regular decision, common app. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. You can just kind of go through, whatever school you want to apply to and click on it and do regular decision. It's non-binding, of course. So that's why you can apply to as many as you want. And yeah, and I should say there's really no scholarship difference on this, right? We'll kind of talk about early decision and the benefits from a scholarship perspective, but you're still going to get a merit scholarship, if not a competitive scholarship application as well. So this is regular decision, RD, pretty straightforward. And then rolling admissions, right? So this is kind of as they come in, it is rolling. It's a rolling process. Rolling decisions can be good and can kind of be not so good. But like I said, I look at it from a last minute perspective. If it's past May 1st, even let's say it's June 1st, and you kind of suddenly had the urge to study in America, you would want to look for colleges that have rolling admissions because they're still technically accepting students and reading applications. So it is good for flexibility. It's good for last minute approaches. Deadlines, it's kind of like, well, what deadlines? There really are no deadlines. And you can do rolling decisions even in the fall, and you'll still get back a decision quickly. So it can almost substitute an early decision or early action as well. But you need to be vigilant. This is a lot of liberal arts colleges like Maryville College. This is more of kind of our, how we look at things. So not every school offers rolling admissions. It's really more of a liberal arts approach. So if you're looking at a lot of good liberal arts colleges, odds are they're going to have a rolling admissions procedure or a application deadline. So yeah, I hope, I'm sure there's already quite a few questions, but this is, I think, a very, very basic overview, and we can talk more about it. And as I have here, right, there's no best or, there's benefits and negatives to all of them, but it's really about what's right for you. Well, how do you feel? Talk about those schools, those dream schools, your application, what you're bringing to the table. It is a strategy for sure, but it'll all work out, right, as it's meant to be. So with that, Aisha, are there any questions, or should we go to the end?
Well, it's totally up to you. We do have questions, but if you want to wait until the end of the session, because we don't know what you'll cover, maybe you'll answer most of the questions, so if you want, we can wait till the end.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's hold off questions to the Q&A, but yeah, I'm glad there are questions. And again, as I mentioned earlier to Aisha, even for American students who grew up with this system, it's still kind of confusing, the early decision, early action. So it's totally natural to have a lot of questions. All right, well, let's go. Let's continue a little bit. Have a very brief overview of scholarships, right? And just wanted to kind of highlight the difference between other kinds of funding, sponsorships, loans. Really the biggest difference in scholarships is that there's nothing to pay back, right? These are funds that can be applied to your education that do not need repayment or require repayment. And there's many different types of scholarships. And I'm sure this probably sounds very basic and obvious, but just to touch on it, merit scholarships, right? And those are going to be primarily off of your grades, right? Your high school transcript. There are need-based scholarships, which I'm going to get into later. There's talent-based scholarships, right? That could be music, that could be arts, film, photography. There's athletic scholarships. There's so many different types of scholarships, and that really is a blessing for you as a student, because you can kind of select and pick and choose, what scholarships are best for me. Where do I fit in? If you are, an athlete with a love of photography, well, you can maximize your scholarship package by looking for athletic scholarships and art scholarships, right? Or talent scholarships. And so, it's just something to kind of be vigilant about and think about, where can I maximize my financial aid? And merit scholarship, we'll touch on this, but that's really, if you're a strong student, that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak, right? If you come in with a 3.8 GPA or a 4.0 GPA, you're going to get a really, really good financial package just from your high school experience, right? So not even the competitive scholarships, not even the additional scholarships, but just that merit scholarship that usually goes with the application itself. All right, so no additional essay. That's just whenever you apply and you get accepted, you get a scholarship with that acceptance. That's a merit scholarship. But yeah, sponsorships, you know, if somebody else is funding you, a guardian, a company, and an organization, and there could be guidelines or expectations with that. This is totally just, you know, subjective and depends on the company or the person, but scholarships, there's no, at the end of the day, you have to do this requirement, right? Sponsorships, there could be. And then loans, of course, taking out money, repaying that usually with interest, available in America, I'm sure in Pakistan, of course, all over the world. But I have that thing at the bottom about FAFSA, right? That's kind of the financial federal aid grants from an American citizen or from the government. If you see anything about like apply for FAFSA, that's not going to be pertinent to you. That's not relevant to international students. So just disregard those messages. But okay, yeah, very quick overview, scholarships. That's what we're looking at today. I wanted to emphasize this because this, you know, colleagues of mine who also do this drives us crazy sometimes because there's a very big difference on full fund or full ride and full tuition. And a lot of schools have full tuition scholarships, right? Which is amazing. Some schools have full rides, which is obviously even more amazing. But a full ride scholarship is everything. It is your housing, it is your meal plan, it is tuition, at least those three major things, which is, you know, a majority of the money that you pay for college. Full tuition is just that tuition. So you're still missing the housing and the food, or yeah, the meal plan. And so still, it's an amazing deal. It's a great opportunity, but you're still going to have money left over that you need to pay. And again, it is America. It is college in America. So this can still be a lot of money, you know, and I just want to be, you know, transparent about that and say, just if you see someone that says full tuition and, you know that your finances or your family's finances is still going to need a really good scholarship, maybe that school's not for you, right? Maybe that's not the opportunity that you're looking for, because it still could be $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 even after a full tuition scholarship. So I just want to say, if you're looking like on Google or talking with counselors or advisors, and you really are, you know, looking for a full ride scholarship, look for full ride, not full tuition. So that's just kind of, I wanted to highlight that really quickly. I think it makes sense. Here's good news, right? International students receive financial packages, financial aid. This is really good. Of course, it is harder to get financial aid as an international student, but it is not impossible. And as this statistic shows, you know, there are very, very generous scholarships out there for you. So just kind of take some time to find those and to navigate those waters. This is my kind of personal tip or insight is, you know, start off looking at the school specific scholarships. There are third-party scholarships, there are external scholarships, but I think you'll get the biggest bang for your buck, the biggest financial package from a school-based scholarship, right? So if you were looking at Maryville College, hypothetically, look at what Maryville College offers first, and then kind of go backwards. Then look elsewhere if you still need, you know, further additional aid. But definitely start with the school, because usually, statistically, that's where you're going to get the biggest financial aid package. And so we talked about merit scholarships, and that's really GPA and transcript based, right? So this is all kind of moving forward, all about competitive scholarships. And those are going to be the full tuition, the full rides, the $30,000, $40,000, you know, financial aid packages. So this is not so much about what they are, as opposed to kind of how to get the best package for you. And so I have kind of 7 different, you know, the criterion, topics that you can really work on to boost your financial aid package. So If there's any questions, of course, please, we'll cover them at the end, but these are all things that I'm sure eventually you'll have a speaker on probably each individual topic, but just to kind of cover it briefly and think about things that you can highlight when you're applying for those scholarships. And this one's huge, right? The extracurricular activity. These are activities that you do outside the classroom, right? So sports, organizations, clubs, your passions, right? Your interests. Whenever I look and read essays for our scholarships, excuse me, I'm looking at leadership skills. So I'm not looking at how many clubs you are a member of or how many sports teams you play, but I'm looking at what was your leadership role, in those clubs or on those sports teams. And I always tell students, I'd rather see you be the captain of the cricket team, for example, as opposed to being on 10 different clubs or organizations, right? If you're only on one team, but you're a major figure on that team, that looks a lot better for me than it does just to have a bunch of other memberships where you're not so active, not doing so much stuff. And that, because again, at the end of the day, we're really looking for leadership, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. That really looks good from a admissions person who's going to be giving scholarships or making a decision on scholarships. Hard and soft skills is also a good thing to kind of highlight or articulate. Hard skills, skills that you actually have certifications in, or that you kind of technical skills. Soft skills more like communication or interpersonal skills. And again, that could be if you captain a cricket team, you have leadership, you have communication, you have strategy skills perhaps, but you also have the hard skills. You've actually learned, and I'm not going to go into cricket because I know nothing about it, but you actually have skills that you need to perform well. Those are hard skills. So you can kind of match both of those in one essay and show how you've learned or adapted or gained hard and soft skills. And extracurricular give an indication of interests, right? Passions, what you want to do when you're not in the classroom. And again, talking about cricket, if you really love cricket, and I hate to generalize all Pakistani students that maybe who do not love cricket, but if you come to America and you want to play cricket and there isn't a cricket club or organization on campus, that's a perfect example to talk about in your essay about, hey, I want to come to your school and I want to start a cricket club. Like I want to start a cricket organization, and talk about that. Talk about how you're going to do that. Talk about your kind of your outline, your dreams, how you're going to make that happen. That would look really, really good for getting you a good scholarship, right? Because you're saying, okay, I'm going to make a change to this campus for the better, right? I'm going to diversify this campus. I'm going to add things to this campus. That looks really good from my perspective. So this is just a little bit about extracurriculars. Language skills, of course, can also be on there. But somebody will talk more about this in depth, but I'm just giving you kind of to touch the surface on this. Letters of recommendation are also huge for getting a good scholarship. Usually you'll definitely need to have one submitted, right? If you're applying for a full tuition or a full ride scholarship, there might be multiple letters of recommendations. This is written by someone who knows you, right? This is usually a kind of a reinforcement of who you are from an outside perspective. Academic, professional, personal-ish. I should have put like a little asterisk in there. You don't want to go too personal, right? You don't want your best friend writing a letter of recommendation. As amazing as I'm sure that would be, there might be a little bit of bias there. So, a counselor, a teacher, Aisha, not to put more, food on her plate for more work, but she would be great. I'm sure she does this already. But to me, whenever I read an application or read a scholarship essay, or I'm looking for things that aren't mentioned on that essay that maybe this person can speak to, right? So usually this is about kind of a work ethic or a academic, skills, but this just kind of brings together the holistic approach of looking at a student's application, right? So what is the student not saying about themselves that this person, this counselor or teacher can say to kind of supplement that. The biggest key here, or biggest point here, is to reach out early. And again, if you're applying early decision or early action, you really need to reach out early, because those are going to be due in October, November. So it could take weeks or months if that teacher, if that counselor, if that advisor is busy, and it's life, people are busy. So you want to make sure you have adequate time for them to say yes. And again, if they say, I'm sorry, but I can't do it at this time, you need to have backups. You need to then find other people who can write you a recommendation. So give them your basic information, maybe a CV resume to also show kind of, how you see yourself, what your experience has been. Tell them where you're applying, what you want to study. And most importantly, make sure you say thank you to the person who then writes this letter. Again, they're taking time out of their life to do this for you. It's it's a small gesture that goes a long way, saying thank you to that person. And again, that could be a make or break on getting accepted to a school. So it really does have a long-term consequence. So yeah, letters of recommendation. We can talk more about that later, of course, as well. This one right here is I probably say this every slide, but the most important, right? This one's huge. Demonstrated interest. And there's a lot of different ways to look at this. But again, if I'm the person, I would just say right off the bat, reach out to the international admissions person at the school that you're applying, right? Send an email, having a question, introducing yourself, something that will start that connection. Because again, at the end of the day, it's that person that's going to help make a decision on whether to admit you or not. And we call it demonstrated interest, right? How active, how interested is a student actually in coming to our school? And if you are, having rapport or building rapport with a counselor, that shows a lot of interest. And so, yeah, send an email, set up a Zoom session, have like a mock interview, or just ask some questions. But it's what this really does is, if it's coming down to a certain number of scholarships that can be allocated, and that's going to be the case every year for every school. Sadly, money does not grow on trees. So there's only a certain number that we can allocate. If it comes down to two students who have very similar GPAs, two similar applications, and one is somebody that I've spoken with every month, maybe had a Zoom session with, maybe, I know his or her favorite football club. I know what they like to do in their spare time. And then another student is somebody who I've never spoken to, right? I've only read their application. They submitted it once. They never sent an email. I know this other student, like I have a connection with them. I can empathize with them. I can understand them. This other person is just somebody on paper, right? So this is kind of the psychological perspective of an application where, you do have that connection with somebody, and that could be at the end of the day, it's psychology, but I'm going to support the person that I know as opposed to the person that I don't really know. So that's where this can make a big difference for you. So, and of course, it's good just to ask questions. We all have questions, and this is a good way to kind of win-win that scenario. You're getting answers, but you're also building rapport and establishing something. So yeah, that's a little bit about demonstrated interest. And I'll just say this kind of, not off the record, but people don't talk about this. Whenever we send out mass emails, you'll kind of get in an email chain. Make sure you're opening those emails, because we can actually see, the school can actually see who opens emails. And so even if they're kind of the generic, like boring emails, make sure you're at least clicking on them and like opening them up for a couple seconds, because you can actually see who opens emails, how long they were read. And that does give you a score for your demonstrated interest. So it might be the most ridiculous thing and something that you don't want to look at all, but make sure you still click it, because that'll at least build your score. So again, you'll have somebody talk to you about that more in depth, I'm sure. my biggest piece of advice, if you have an interview for a full scholarship, full tuition, and I'm sure that, most of these do, right? The Maryville College one, you're going to have a Zoom interview for sure. Might be multiple rounds with different panelists, but definitely make sure it's only you at that interview. Do not bring a friend with you. Not sure if anybody catches that reference, but it was a big hit here in America. So we'll move on. But very quickly, we'll talk about finances. Again, you could do webinar after webinar just on finances, but I wanted to highlight that education can be expensive. I'm not saying it always is, but I put some total cost up here from schools that you would definitely know. I took the names off out of courtesy to them. But, this is really, really pricey. It's crazy, right? It's ridiculous. And so I just, we need to be transparent and vulnerable about this, that it can be very, very expensive here. And I say that because this does also affect scholarship opportunities, right? There is a reason I'm talking about finances and scholarships and getting scholarships, because it might actually impact you on the amount of money that you're able to provide for yourself, and then the amount of money that a school is willing to give you. So I'll dabble on that here in a second, but most schools do want to see some kind of bank statement or proof of funding. And this is really not even a school thing. This is a government thing. This is a USCIS requirement that, you need to be able to support yourself for 1 year. That's what they're looking for. That's what then I have to sign off on and say, yes, this student has demonstrated that. And this can be through a myriad of ways, right? Personal funds, loans, letters, sponsorship forms. We don't need to talk too much about that, but the part where it might impact your scholarship is that it might actually be part of the application itself. So there are need blind applications, there are need aware applications, and if it's need blind, this is not so important, right? It's not part of the application itself. But if it is a need aware application, like Maryville College, for example, we actually need to see proof of funding. Otherwise, you're not eligible for any scholarship, right? You haven't completed the actual application itself. So just like submitting a passport photo or a transcript, you actually need to submit also some kind of proof of funding. And most schools are this way. And so I just say this because, even if you found a perfect scholarship for you that might be a full ride or, a very generous financial offer, if you still have to submit some kind of proof of funding on the application, to even get there, you have to show something. So maybe this next slide will make it a little bit more clear, but I'm just saying, yeah, finance is very important. Need blind schools, need aware, and you just need to make sure that even if you are looking for a very good scholarship package, do you still need to submit some kind of financial information on that with that? That's really the point of this. And every school will be different, but most schools you do. Just want to throw that out there. So need blind, need aware, there'll be another webinar on this, I'm sure. So very quickly, again, I know we've covered a lot of ground. I hope I've not confused people more than when we started, but my recommendations for essays, be unique, be yourself. Strong opening is key. And I always tell students, especially during the application season, I'm reading, 20 or 30 essays a day. You want to imagine yourself or put yourself in the shoes that you're that last essay that I'm reading, right? It's 4:45. I'm tired. I want to go home, maybe watch some football, European football. And I need something that's going to compel me to stay in my seat and want to read further, right? I need to be hooked in on something. And so imagine, that's the scenario. That's what you need to kind of play with. So I always like a good mystery or kind of, rhetorical setup, right? For example, I don't remember waking up in the hospital or how I got here, right? That's like a good hook line because I want to know, okay, well, what's the story here? How did you end up in this scenario? Something like that. Tone, style, full circle, closing and beginning. Excuse me. So like you want to open it and kind of bookend it at the closing. So make sure it ties together, I guess is the point. Yeah, and a lot of this is, again, kind of, I think, obvious, and everybody here is a good student, but you want to definitely have a good opening is my point. So going back to that kind of previous thing about extracurriculars, leadership skills is also key, right? So if I'm reading an essay, at the end of the day, I'm really looking for, does this student exhibit leadership? And that can be in a multitude of ways. That can be academically, that can be, you know, through a personal narrative or kind of through, you know, some history lesson. But what's the leadership skills that this student is going to bring to this campus? That's kind of what all admissions people ask themselves when looking at essays. So yeah, be kind of thinking about that. And most importantly, proofread. And this one is very, very important. Nothing takes somebody out of an essay more than, you know, like a misspelled word or kind of where a comma should be and there isn't. And I come from an English teaching background, and a lot of people in my position do. So, you know, we are aware of this, and we, you know, it does drive us crazy. So proofread, send it to Aisha, send it to a teacher, send it to me, you know, even if you're applying elsewhere. You know, I'm happy to glance over it, but you just need another set of eyes before you submit that, you know, the essay finally. So proofread. Okay, so I think we're good. Of course, yeah, and not to put more on Aisha, but definitely EducationUSA, Pakistani support. Aisha is obviously great. Very quickly, I just touched briefly. Again, I'm a terrible salesperson because I don't like to talk too much about Maryville College, although it is a great place. It's in Eastern Tennessee, Smoky Mountains. That's kind of what we're known for. Very small school, very beautiful campus, but it is a liberal arts college. So you can really study anything that you want to study. You can come in and not know what you want to study, because I know that's hard when you're 17 and 18 to actually know what you want to do for the rest of your life. I'm 30, I'm still figuring that out myself. So, you know, you have time to kind of figure that out and adjust. And you can take psychology courses, or you can take economics, you can take film. And if you don't like any of those, you don't have to take them again, right? You kind of can sample the waters and see what's the best fit for you. We do have generous scholarships. That is something that we're known for. There are full tuition scholarships. And again, going back to that slide earlier, that still means there's going to be room and board, but there is about a $40,000 tuition scholarship that goes a long way. And we are kind of a prestigious, you know, academically, not that rankings mean everything, but it's nice when you are highly ranked as kind of the 5th best school, and I say best, in the South. So there is academic prestige, there is beautiful environments, and yeah, you know, a strong support staff. So just, yeah, a couple of photos from our region. That one on the left where the flagpole is, that's our office. We do have Pakistani students, which are great. But yeah, really the mountains, you know, every view on campus has a view of the mountains. We have activities there every weekend. That's, you know, included in the cost. And so it's very nice therapy and kind of meditative, yeah, to get outside. Merit scholarships, we talked about this. This is whenever you apply to the college, you're also applying for merit scholarships. And every school is going to be different, but this is kind of how ours sets up. So if you had a 3.8 GPA in high school and you applied, you would automatically get $26,000 off of your total cost. And that goes down to $15,000 depending on your GPA. And then the International Diversity Scholarship is that full tuition scholarship. Just happens to be the person on the left is our diversity scholar. She's from Uzbekistan. Samin on the right is from Pakistan. That was a coincidence. This is not just putting this in there because it is EducationUSA Pakistan. But yeah, so there is one of these per year. Again, it is an additional application, an additional essay, an interview, and like I said, we're looking for leadership skills. So that's kind of how you want to write that essay or kind of manipulate your answers. How have I been a leadership, or how have I been a leader, and how will I continue to be a leader? Whew. Okay, I think we did it. Please, let's do some questions. Aisha, I hope that was okay.
That was amazing. Thank you, Will. We have a lot of questions, so we're going to try to get to as many as possible, but we do only have 15 minutes left. So let's just get started. Let's dive right into it. We have one of our counselors, Ms. Salma here. Ms. Salma, thank you for attending. And she's also shared some feedback. She said, thank you for a very well-prepared session, Will. So she asks, what kind of SAT score and what kind of GPA is required for merit scholarships usually?
That's a great question. And let me touch on the GPA, because you probably noticed this as well, Aisha, but especially in the past 3 years, right? Kind of COVID happened, and schools have really are going the way that a lot of liberal arts colleges have been for a while, and not requiring SAT or ACT standardized tests. And I'm not saying that's everyone, because it's not. There still certainly are a lot of schools that do offer that, but schools are definitely going in this direction. And I'm saying that because Maryville College is one of those schools that does not do standardized tests, right? Or it's not required. And some schools, it's forbidden even to submit them. Some schools still require them, but GPA, 3.0 and above is what you're really looking for, is what we're looking for. And also COVID changed the world in that it is a more holistic approach these days. So I don't want to sit here and scare off anybody if you're lower than a 3.0, because of course there's much more to a person than their grade point average, right? You could argue there's a lot more to a person than that. And so I do think a lot of schools these days are looking more holistically, or they're looking at the bigger picture, the fuller picture of not just GPA, but also extracurriculars, right? Kind of, what's a student doing outside the classroom, letters of recommendation, writing skills, right? Essays, things that then kind of supplement that GPA. But yeah, I think for us, again, 3.0 and above is really what you're looking for merit scholarships, for good merit scholarships.
That makes sense. Thank you. There are a lot of questions, also worried queries about students who have done their A levels, as most students have in Pakistan. So Maryville has its own way of converting those A level grades into the GPA, right?
That is correct. And most schools are going to do that, so don't, I would tell students, don't worry about you doing any conversion, you doing any is this going to be accepted? Is this going to be transferable? That's something that we would do on our end. So A levels, obviously great, fantastic, but don't worry about, oh, it's an American system, or it's a different system, so therefore they're not relevant, or they're not accepted. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. We have another question from Muhammad bin Farouk, and he asks, how do colleges actually authenticate your activities? Because they don't usually ask for certificates for your extracurriculars. So how do they authenticate those?
That's a great question. And, we authenticate transcripts and usually bank accounts, looking at actual funding documents. I've never really thought to authenticate a extracurricular activity, Mohammed, and now I probably am going to think about that. But now usually it's honor system. I don't think a student is going to, surely a student's not going to lie about, being captain of the football team, or making short films if they're into movies. So honor system, I guess, Mohammed, is my answer. So yeah, no school will do that. I don't think any school would ever say, I need proof that you played on this team, or I need proof that you were in this club. That's okay.
Right. And just a quick point here, students, they've been doing this for a long time, like the admissions committees. people like Will, they read thousands of essays. So they also know like when someone is, being transparent and honest, they have ways of knowing. So it's always good to be transparent. They will catch on. It's their job, and they're very well trained to distinguish between honest replies and, exaggerated ones. Okay, this is a good question from Saida Zara. In times of, artificial intelligence, how will universities determine whether the essay is, through ChatGPT or they've written it themselves?
We're talking about that this week, actually, because this has changed everything, changed the whole world, but especially writing essays and applications. As of now, this generation, like the students who are looking at school this year and next year might be the last ones that can kind of get away with that, I would say. Not saying that you should do it, of course, but just, I don't think there's any safeguards in place yet. There will be, for sure. Probably next year there will be, but as of now, that's the thing. And kind of going back to what you said, Aisha, you can you can still tell, right? You can still, AI can only make it so personable,
Right.
to an extent. So I would just say, if it's written by you, from your heart, with your own brain, your own style, that no computer can mimic that, right? That's truly you, that's authentic. So you can tell. And I was going to say something, what you just said, Aisha, about like, we've been doing this for a while and kind of can tell these fake things. Another advice that I would give for writing essays is make sure like the school that you're applying to, if it is an early decision or early action, make sure that essay is specific to that school, because as Aisha said, we read thousands of essays every year. And it's like, you can tell the ones that are written for a mass, general, and you just change the school name and, I'm applying to school X, and then the next essay for the different schools, I'm applying to school Y. You can tell when it's the same essay for every school. Make it, special to that school, right? Write about the community, right? If you're writing about Maryville College, write about professors that you've looked at, look at classes, talk about the Smoky Mountains, right? Write about something that shows, okay, I've done my research and this essay is directly related to this school. This is not some broad send to 30 schools. This is just for you, right? Because that does go a long way, and you can tell when that happens, and it definitely makes a big difference.
Right, absolutely. And I've been seeing that more and more schools are doing interviews, and not just for the scholarships, but even just for acceptances. So it's very hard to get through the interview if you haven't really actually done the things you write about. So that's another thing to keep in mind, that there might be an interview. Okay, so another question is, well, we have a bunch on demonstrated interest, but I'm going to try to loop them up in one. What is kind of like, the line between showing demonstrated interest in a nice way and being bothersome, like pestering the admissions contact?
That's a great question. Yeah, I would say short and sweet on your emails, because I tell students this all the time at other webinars about this, and then I will get like almost like a novel like email, kind of giving the whole history, the whole backstory of that student. Remember, we are reading a lot of emails every day, a lot of essays too. So short and sweet, dear Will, right? I don't need to be called Mr. Doran, but yeah, dear Will, 2 or 3 sentences, and then, all the best, look forward to your response. So, and you're right, that is a psychological way almost that puts you in favor of other students who are going to write really, really long-winded responses and emails. So short and sweet, succinct, right, to the point, with the question and well wishes, right? So I hope that makes sense, but yeah.
That does. Thank you. We have a few more on gap years. What is your take on gap years? Are they a detriment or not?
Well, I don't think they're a detriment, but it's, I guess the question would be, what are you doing during that gap year? Because again, that can totally, that can change your life, and that could be an awesome experience that then you can, take to college. So if you're traveling, if you're working, if you're volunteering, I think that's great. And that would, I would never hold that against somebody who is coming in as like a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old as a freshman, if you've done a gap year. However, if you have done a gap year and you weren't really doing much, then I would say it would hurt you almost a lot, because it's like that. Ideally, still schools are kind of looking for that 17 to 19, start date, or it's like start age range, right? You come in as a 17-year-old to 19, 20. And I don't want to scare off students, but there are schools that after you hit 20, where you're just not admissible as a freshman, right? So it's like, you do want to be in that kind of sweet spot. But again, if you've done a gap year of really cool things or, work experience, that's a benefit, not a detriment.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. So just clarifying, there are a few questions on this. Your university is not on the Common App, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. And because of that, there's no application fee. So, that's the schools that are not on the Common App kind of have this running, should we be, should we not be? And kind of the reason why we're not is then, at least for you as a student, there's no application fee. So it is free to apply. Again, it's an additional essay or additional application, but there's no cost to it. So that's kind of how they justify that.
Okay. Another question from Zen is, if he gets into a school via early decision, but later due to whatever reason finds out that he cannot afford it, would he still be contractually obligated to attend?
That is that would be a school by school decision. I don't want to say yes or no. I mean, theoretically, yes, because you're supposed to have all your finances kind of in order right before you apply, right? And there might be a thing on that application that says, I have looked at my finances, or I have confirmed my financial sponsoring. And so they're assuming, the people who make that decision, that this student has already confirmed that. So, but again, nobody's going to be, nobody's going to go to jail for that, or going to be, ruined. So, but talk to the school, of course, reach out to each admissions person and kind of say, really, be very thorough, be very vulnerable, very transparent, but you can talk about that.
Right. And just to clarify that, at the time you apply, most of you will be filling out a CSS profile, our CCC students who are here. So when a school accepts you on an ED basis, they will be meeting your need, the need that you've demonstrated at that time, at the time of application. If I'm not mistaken, that is true, right? Like, they will meet that to offer you that acceptance early. So yeah, if circumstances change, Will is right, you have to reach out to the school. And I hope that none of our students come to that point, hopefully. Okay, another question, Will, I think we just have time for one or two more. So I'm just trying to lump them together. There's one on letters of recommendation. Who would you advise students to get the letters of recommendation from? Just teachers and advisors / counselors, or anyone else?
Whenever I was applying to college many years ago, I did a teacher, a counselor, I did a person that I'd worked for in the summer, like during high school, and even like a family friend. And that one is a little, I don't see a negative to that, but that's probably not like the one that you definitely want to go to. But that was more for like the character aspect. Like, a family friend can talk about who you are, as a person, right? But yeah, I think a teacher, and again, if you know that you want to study history, or you want to do law, or, like some kind of social sciences, having like a history teacher or a teacher from one of those subjects in high school looks really good. Anything EducationUSA would be, that's the other thing, talking about authenticity. We do get a lot of dodgy letters of recommendations, right? The ones that I was telling you about, having your best friend write it would be great, but it's not really reliable. We see a lot that are like, okay, this is clearly a fake letter. Like, this is not a real person. But if EducationUSA is doing it, I mean, it's all, certified and stamped, and we know the counselors. So that's a good one. And again, not to put more work on your plate, Aisha, but yeah, EducationUSA, high school counselor, high school teacher. Those are all good ones.
Great, thank you. And well, just two really quick ones. These are specific to Maryville, so I'm just gonna throw them out there. The first one is, does Maryville have any scholarships for religious minorities or women specifically?
Well, we have scholarships for religious minorities and for women. It's not that we have a scholarship that is for religious minority women, but we definitely have scholarships that would, we have religious scholarships. And again, that could also tie into the International Diversity Scholarship, right? If that right there is an essay. You could talk about being a religious minority, a female, and that would, that could almost write itself. So yes and no. I mean, I don't want to lie, but yes, it is. We have religious scholarships, we have diversity scholarships, so can combine those two for sure.
Thank you. And last one, could you just quickly tell us about the language proficiency requirements? Because a lot of schools, if you have a B grade or better in your O levels, then that language proficiency test is waived off. Is that true for Maryville as well?
That would be true, yes. And we have certain different guidelines. That would be totally fine. And again, I'm kind of the one who also oversees this. So we have our requirements and kind of our minimums, like for TOEFL, for IELTS, for Duolingo. I think 6.5 IELTS, TOEFL about 80, 84. Duolingo is a 110 minimum. But again, if you have high school grades or subjects that you've excelled at, that can be waived. If you've taken ACT, SAT, and had a certain score on the English portions, those can be waived. And then again, if we've communicated enough to where, I feel comfortable that you will thrive here, it can still kind of be waived as well. So, yes.
That is great to know. Thank you. That makes it a lot more accessible for our students to apply. So yes, I would encourage all of you to reach out and get this clarified on a person-to-person basis before you actually submit your application. And that is all the time we have. Thank you so much, Will. This was super helpful. We got a ton of questions and we haven't gotten to all of them. A lot of your questions were very specific. So if you want answers to those, reach out to me. I've shared our email addresses and we'll be happy to get back. And Will, if you have anything you want to say before you leave, please go for it.
Yeah, well, just thank you so much, Aisha, for this opportunity. And thank you, everybody, for joining. I do have my email here on the screen. If you have any questions, again, even if it's not Maryville College related, I'm happy to help or facilitate that. Yeah, just shoot me an email and we'll be in touch. But yeah, thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thanks again. Will, we hope to have you back for more of our sessions at some point. This was wonderful. And to all the students who showed up, thank you. Again, we're always here for questions, so reach out to us and we'll see you at the next session. Bye.